Welcome everyone to another video, and today we want to have a closer look at this cockpit vane at the McLaren. As we said in one of my last videos, this design is not ideal. You can see how bumpy it is in the second element part. The transition between one element and two elements is not very nice, and we also have a super big trailing edge here, which is creating lots of separations that is then traveling further downstream. And basically that's an element which should tidy up things or keep the losses close to the center line, but it's creating separations by itself, so that's not really nice. So I want to show you how we can design a better part within half an hour. So first of all, if we look at the structure, on the left hand side, you can see that this program is obviously CATIA V5. Most of the Formula 1 teams are using CATIA, usually 3D Experience and V6. Some of the teams are using Siemens NX, but if you know about CATIA V5, which you can get very easily because it's pretty old, you have a big advantage in your interview. So you can see the structure here. There's input, construction, output. This is how I was taught. I mean, every team uses a different structure there, but it's good to keep it as tidy as possible. You can see within construction, there is single element and dual element. And single element is the upper part, dual element, the two lower ones. And you can see that within the single element, there is first of all, the definition of the profile. These profiles here are heavily simplified, so teams are using much more complicated profiles. This here is basically just a spline with 3 points, but it gets us pretty good results as well. And you can see that there's a section plane. Everything is based off the section plane, so if I move that around, everything else will move with it. We have a leading edge tangency. We have the profile, which is the profile of this wing profile without the trailing edge. And then there is an extrude, and the extrude is just a straight extrude in Z direction upwards, as you can see. So super simple design. We just have a couple of functions there to control the profiles better. And then for the dual element, there is a forward one, there's a rearward one, and there are surfaces. So forward one defines the profile, and the rearward one, the rearward profile. And you can see the structure inside is exactly the same. Now the rearward one, exactly the same. So we start with the section plane, have all the components, and in the end we are just drawing the spline with 3 points. And then for the surface we have a control point and a guide, and I can show you the guide here. Basically it's just connecting this control point with the leading edge point of the element with a Z tangency, so that's why we get this slight curve. And then we do a sweep, so we choose the profile and the guide curve, and this is how we can create these surfaces. Both profiles have the same guide curve. Okay, so this is just our starting setup. That's not really what we wanted to design here. What we want to design now is the transition between the one element part and the two element part. So first of all, we want to work in a very tidy way. So within construction, we create a new folder called transition. So everything we design for the transition now will be in the transition folder. Okay, so basically we need to create two profiles that fit within this one profile at the top. First of all, to create this transition, I want to bring that profile down, so I'm creating a join of the single element profile, so I have it in my transition folder, as you can see here. So this join is just the upper profile, so I don't always have to go back to the single element folder, or these folders are called geometrical sets in CATIA, but in the end it's nothing else than a folder. So that is our upper single element, which we can now switch off because we have that profile there now. And we don't need to see the surfaces anymore. First, we want to build the wireframe for our transition from two elements to one element. You can see that these two elements actually fit this one element pretty well, but they're not exactly lying on top of the first element. So they don't exactly match. And we need to create something that matches exactly so we can have a proper transition and nice tangent surfaces later on. So tangent means without any edges, without hard edges. Very important in aero design because you don't want the flow to be tripped on a hard edge. Everything should be smooth. Okay, so first of all, I'm creating the most forward point. So I'm just selecting that profile, choosing the most forward point in X. Now I'm creating points on that curve. This is important because later I need to separate the part of the transition which should be tangent and the other one which is not tangent. And you will see what I mean by that in a minute. So this is our first point, which we can use to split the profile later. So this point should be in that position where the yellow profile is leaving the white profile. So this is where the surface later will not be tangent anymore. It will be a separate surface on the inner side of that vane. And it's always good to rename all these components so other designers can understand very easily what you did here. Okay, so it's always a good habit to rename everything. So also for you later, so when it's getting more complex later on, you always can be sure that you clicked the right component if it's named properly. So for example here the forward point and then an inboard point and an outboard point for the splits. So we just roughly position that, and also keep in mind what we are designing here is just the first concept. So we just create the wireframe and we create something that roughly fits, and later on, once this design is done, we can fine-tune everything to exactly what we want. But first of all, we create a rough surface. Okay, so this one again should be at the transition between where the surface later will be tangent and where it ends. So we put it exactly at the trailing edge here at this point, if we can. I mean, it doesn't have to match perfectly. It should just roughly be in that position. And of course, you can also play with these points later on. So it doesn't have to be a super straight element. You can also move everything around. And that's another thing to keep in mind here. It seems a bit complicated when we do these things here, but everything is designed in a way that it's parametric later on. So we can move things around and nothing will fall over. Of course, we could just click features on the screen here now, but if we would do that, then it would be very easy to fall over later on, and then no one would know how to troubleshoot this design, which is very bad. People always think that Formula One design is super complex and it has to be super complex, but actually everything is about simplicity. So you want things to be as simple as possible, even if it's such a transition between two elements and one wing element. Because if it's simple, it's much easier to fix. It's also much tougher, so you have robust models that don't fall over at every little change. And also for other designers that might pick up your design to do something else, or if you are working in a different project, they have to continue your project, and it's really important for the development speed of the team that they understand your design as quickly as possible. So it's really important that it's not too complicated. So here we just created the trailing edge of this inner profile. And now you can see we have 2 points. We create a spline between the two. Choose the tangencies, and that's it. So that's already our replication of the profile below. Now we can just fine tune it a little bit. So move the point a little bit, play with the tensions on the spline. Okay, so that point position seems to be okay. Now we need some different settings here. So the tangent tension, so you can see we can put this down a little bit and then it fits much better. It doesn't fit exactly, but that's not the point. It just needs to fit roughly. Okay, so that's the replication of our first element. And now we do the same for the rearward element. As you can imagine, we need 2 points again, and then we create a leading edge cap. And you will see what I mean by that in a minute. So first of all, we need to tidy up. Everything in transition should be in a separate folder now, because we only worked on the forward profile. So I call this folder forward, put all the elements inside there, and then if someone picks up my design, they know that the whole forward transition is defined in there. And now we are creating a folder called rearward, so that we can put all our construction for the rearward element inside there. Okay, so basically we do exactly the same thing as before, so we can just select the inboard and outboard split points that we created before, paste them in here and just change their settings, so just change the length and put them to the positions that we want. You can see we need one inner one, one outer one, so which is perfect again. So the naming is already correct. We don't have to rename it again. So let's put it here. And the outboard one a little bit further back. Maybe we should quickly talk about why we need such a two-element vane. So this vane is a single element at the top and is a double element at the bottom, so close to the surface. Because of the boundary layer, it would be weakened and it's very easy for flow to separate if the element is too long. That's why you need a slot gap in between, which is introducing more fresh air from the inner side, so the flow can stay attached. So that's why this vane has two elements at the bottom and one element at the top. So we created these 2 points, we created a spline in between, and you can see that it doesn't work, it doesn't look good, this is not a wing profile. So to replicate what we have there, it makes sense to create a leading edge point, which is overlaying the leading edge point of the lower element. So just on that section plane, and it's important that you, if you have planes, work with planes, so if you change the position of the plane, everything else is moving with it, really important. And we just created that point on that plane. Now we just fine-tune the point's position. It always makes sense to take round numbers here, so don't take any strange numbers with decimal places. Just take numbers that are easy to remember and easy to fix for others. Again, everything is about simplicity here. Okay, so now we just add this point to the spline, so it already looks much better. We just need to play with the tensions now. Okay, so we can also fine-tune these positions again. So outboard point a bit further back, because if we zoom in, we now see that it's a little bit off. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but the closer it is, the nicer it looks later. Okay, and now we can go to the spline and change the tensions a bit. By default, they're always on 1, so you can see now that it looks much more than a wing profile. Okay, and then go to the next one. We don't need to worry about the tangencies with the other profile because that is fixed, right? So we fixed that spline to the tangency or to the profile of the single element. So it can never become non-tangent. Just make sure that this leading edge cap that we just created is always within that profile, so it shouldn't stick out, otherwise we can't join them later. Okay, so I'm just renaming a couple of features here so it's easier to understand the construction later on. So that's our newly created leading edge point. Okay, so you can see what we did here, right? So we just replicated the lower profiles just with 2 splines and 1 line for the forward trailing edge. So a very simple way. These are just points on curves and these are just simple splines. So it's very easy to replicate, very easy to fix, very easy to understand. And that's what it's all about. Okay, now that we have these profiles, we can build the guides between them, but we would need the same split points or split points in roughly the same positions on the lower real profiles. And this is what we need to do now. So let's build the guides first that we have. We create a new folder for that called guides within transition. So you can very clearly see we defined everything about the forward profile, everything about the rearward profile, and now we define the guides. For these guides, in this case, it's quite easy. It's just a tangency in Z direction, so the vertical axis. But as soon as we apply this vertical axis, you can see that the direction is wrong. So that's why we always revert that. But these are just 2 clicks, so it's not a problem. The good thing is, so we always need to put a tangency direction here, because if you imagine you change the profile's position later on, these splines will always stick with it. It will always move with it. Although right now it looks like a straight line, it doesn't have to be a straight line. We designed this whole thing so we can put it in any possible position later on, and this design will not fall over. And that is the most important thing, because you spend most of your time in a Formula One aero design department troubleshooting things. So by avoiding trouble, you significantly increase the development speed of your team. And you can get parts out quicker, you can get them quicker through CFD, you can get them quicker through the wind tunnel and quicker to the track. So that's why we design everything here in a parametric way, so you can move things around and it doesn't fall over. Okay, so we have these split points that we created before on the upper single element, and now we need the same split points on the lower ones. We are not projecting that downwards because the lower profiles could be different. I mean, right now they look pretty similar, but if you want to change profiles later on because CFD tells you that it's not really a good fit, and you want to fine-tune the profiles, you don't want everything to fall over. So that's why we just independently create these new points. So we just create a point on curve on the profile of that lower forward ring profile, starting from the leading edge point again. Now we just see it in top view, put it roughly in the same position. And then that's our split point. And we do this 4 times, and then we have all the points we need for our guides. You can also change the step here, so we can fine-tune that a little bit better. Okay, that looks good. It's reasonably close. Okay, so we have the upper split point now, and also the same split point on the lower side. So we can build this guide, again, with a tangency direction for each one of the sides. And again, we reverse the tangency. I want to show you all of this here in real time, so that's why I'm not like playing with higher speed this video, or I don't want to fast forward or something, because you should see how long it really takes to design something like this. And you should really see every single step. Although I might be a bit quick here in this video, but you can get the rough idea, and you can also stop the video if it's too fast for you. So if you're interested in these kind of Formula One designs, then check out my online courses with the links below. I'm also offering live courses, so courses where we will have a design session for 2-3 hours per day for 6 weeks in a row. And you will really learn how to design anything around the Formula One car, which is the perfect preparation for your career in F1. And which is stuff that you won't learn at uni, because most of the universities don't teach you CATIA, but this is what car industry and Formula One expect of you. So if you find this interesting, then check out my courses below, and you will learn everything about these kind of designs and how to use CATIA in a Formula One way in my courses. So again, same thing here. We just position that split point reasonably close to the other split point. Okay, so you can see we have the same points below. Okay, give it a tangency direction, reverse the tangency direction. Okay, so you can see where this is going. So we are basically splitting the surfaces that will be tangent later on, and for ones which will not be tangent later on. So we can build the forward element with 3 surfaces and the rearward element with 4 surfaces. And you can see how this works in a bit. We just need to get the right splits for the 2 lower elements, so for the yellow real profile. So we hide them right now and just show the profile, because this is the one we need to split now. Remember, the profile complete is exactly the same, just with trailing edge, and we want the one without trailing edge. Okay, so we can include that in the forward folder because it's for the forward element. Remember to use this function define in work object to activate that folder, so everything you design will be in this folder, which is underlined right now. Sometimes you don't remember that and then design something and you don't know where it is in the tree. Just remember to always switch that on. That's such a CATIA thing. Okay, so now we were splitting this. You can see we have the outside and the inboard side of the profile now, and we do the same at the back. Here we need 3 splits. So we choose the whole profile, choose the 2 split points, and now this is our leading edge cap separately. Now we can copy and paste that, just remove 1 split point and we have the other side. So this is the rearward one. This is the kind of surface that will still be tangent later on. And we do the same on the other side, so also this will be the part that will still be tangent to the surrounding elements. Okay, so we have these 3 splits. That's everything we need here. You can also work with these keep points, but just not in this case because we have 2 split points. But if you want to make sure that these splits don't flip to the other side later on, it makes sense to do everything with keep points, just that you know that there is this function. Okay, so that is basically the whole wireframe that we need for this transition between the 2 elements and the 1 element. Now I'm showing the surfaces for the upper and lower parts because I need them as tangency surfaces for what we are creating now. Okay, so we can now start building the multi-sections. Multi-section is the name of the function in CATIA to build surfaces. It's the most robust way to build surfaces because you can define profiles and guides, or sections and guides. And you can give each one of them separately tangencies, and usually this is the best way of creating surfaces. We are creating a surface folder now. So you can see sections are defined in the upper part and guides in the lower part. You always need to decide what is a section and what is a guide. So we still need to split the upper part to what we need there before we can start. So again, in the forward folder. But this is relatively quick because we already have these points. We already have the profile here. Okay, so that's the outer side. And now we just need the 2 rearward parts of the rearward element. So we remove the cutting points and choose the new ones. Okay, so that's the inner side of the rearward element, and now we need the outboard side. Okay, flip the direction. Okay, that's it. Okay, now we should be good to go. Okay, we choose multi-section. In terms of directions, it's important here that you stick to a certain direction. So I'm building this the surface from top to bottom. So I selected the section 1 first at the top and then section 2 at the bottom. You can see the direction of both sections. They should have the same direction. And then also click the guides in the arrow's direction. Okay, So this worked. We also chose the tangency surfaces for that. Now the same again on the inner side. So we choose the upper section, the lower section. You can see they're not in the same direction, so I flip the direction here. Now we choose the guides in the arrow's direction, so the forward one, the rearward one. Okay. The preview button, very important before you apply the tangencies. Try that. So it could build the surface before, but now that I wanted to apply the tangency, CATIA has the problem that it thinks that this line doesn't lie on the surface, which is nonsense, but this is CATIA. So we need to convince CATIA that it's really lying on top of that surface. So what we do here is just a little CATIA trick that I can tell you. Just take that split and do an intersection on the surface. So you just ask CATIA, does this line lie on that surface? And then this intersection will work. And instead of using the split, we use the intersection, which is exactly the same line, but with the intersection it works, with the split it doesn't. So now we can replace this split by the intersection, choose the support again, and now it works. Okay, so we already have two surfaces. We are still missing the trailing edge. Also, the trailing edge will be built with a multi-section, just in case we want to have profiles in different positions later, and the trailing edge won't be as straight as it is right now. It can also be curved in any direction, so this is a super flexible model that we are creating here. The thing you should think about is also that if you are creating bulletproof models that don't fall over or are easy to work with, people will remember your name because your name is always next to your design, so you can create your own brand within the company, which is a good thing. And if you have an exceptionally good design, then people will use it for years as a standard design, as a basis for other designs. And also this will improve your image within the company, which is always a good thing in F1. It's always funny how even other teams that you're not even working with, or you don't even know anyone there, they even know who's good in which department of another team. So because people talk to each other, department leaders have study friends or other school friends in other teams. You know, if you do a good job, the grid will know. Okay, flip the direction again. And you can see it's also important to choose which surface to build first. So first we are building the simple surfaces, these two outboard ones. So the inner and the outboard one of the rearward element, because now we can use these two surfaces as the tangency surfaces for our leading edge cap. So the leading edge cap is the last one that I'm building, and you can see the sections go in the same direction, also the guides go in the same direction. And now we can choose the tangencies. So for section 1, it's not the upper one because this is the non-tangent part. But for section 2, we have a tangency, and also we can now choose these two surfaces we just created before as tangencies for the guides. Okay, so that's our leading edge and our leading edge cap. And now we just need the trailing edge. Okay, same way again, so just make sure that the sections point in the same direction. Okay, so we created all the surfaces we need, except the surface between the two elements. So if we look at the part from below, this surface is still missing. But it's also very easy to create that because we have all the lines around it, or we can quickly create these splits and just flip the direction and we have it. So I just copy and pasted this rearward split, then change the direction, add another split point, and this is our inboard line. And now we do the same for the outboard line. You can see we are working a lot with copy and paste here. So if you already renamed the part, or if the setting is already correct, then you just copy and paste it and you don't have to do it again, so you are a bit quicker. Okay, and now we just choose the fill function. Fill is really just like filling a hole, so you just need to select the lines to create a closed line. Okay, closed contour, and that's our surface. It's all in the same plane right now, so we don't have any problems. Be careful with a fill if it's like a curvy surface, because it's likely to bulge out. But for something as simple as this here, it's okay. We also don't need tangencies for this because it's just a straight wall. So you can see we just join these two elements in a straight wall with a single element. So a super simple aero design. We don't need any patches in between. We don't need any complicated lines, curves, and curved surfaces. This is really just straight surfaces into a straight wall. And although it can be curved, because like I said, if you change the lower elements now, then the whole transition will move with it. It won't fall over. We want to keep it as simple as possible, as we said. So we just join everything together. So all the separate surfaces we created, and we create one large surface from it. Okay. And don't forget the inner wall. Okay. And that's our whole element. So the next thing we want to do here is to fillet the sharp edges, because obviously we can't leave it as it is with these sharp edges. They will create vortices, and this is not what we want. But we can rename this here so people know that this is the complete vane. Everything is joined together. Now we need to think about which edge do we want to fillet first. So it makes sense to do this leading edge cap, so the inner one, which is the most complicated one, first. You can see that it doesn't work because it's going from a sharp line into a tangent surface, because we need to work with keep edges here. So if you go on more, you can see we can keep this outside edge, which is also what we want because we don't want any strange shape. We want this fillet to go in a straight line. So we want to keep that edge. And now that works, and we don't even reach this fillet into the other element, so that's also a good thing. Now for the next one, we can choose a variable fillet, because for wing profiles you always want the largest radius at the leading edge and you want the smallest radius of a fillet at the trailing edge, because you don't want the trailing edge to be bigger. So we choose 0.5 here, for example. And also here we need the keep edge function. You can see it's 2 mm in front. We also chose a linear progression for this. By default it's cubic, but it also looks, it always looks a bit strange. So we can increase that to maybe 3 mm. Okay. So that looks good. And now we only have the two outside edges. And we can take a standard edge fillet for that. So this one, and also select the other thing at the same time, and then just a small 0.5 mm fillet. So that in the end is the complete part. So you can see how the transition worked between two elements and one element, and you can see that we have a very nice straight surface. There is nothing bumpy about that. There is no dip inside or something. It's a very clean slot gap here. This slot gap won't create a lot of turbulences. Important is just that the slot gap is aligned to the flow in this area, but assuming that this flow is in a straight line, this is pretty okay. If we look at the McLaren one, you can see the bumpy surface. You can see how the trailing edge between the two elements is closed, which creates huge separations, which will travel downstream. And I mean, it's just how it sometimes is in these development departments. You want to get something quickly out of the door. You have a new joiner. They quickly get it done, or as quick as possible. The numbers in CFD and in the wind tunnel are not so bad, so you just quickly get it out to the track. And then something like this ends up at the car. But on the other hand, there is a certain honor between the aero designers, and you basically don't want such a part to be on the car. Okay, so there you have it. Half an hour for such a feature, two elements and one element, and with a much nicer slot gap. So if you're interested in such kind of Formula 1 design, check out my online courses with the links below, and see you at the next video.